Hello, everyone. Welcome to Brattleboro's Town Matters podcast. This podcast is meant to be a brief update on what's happening in Brattleboro town government. I'm your host, Town Manager John Potter, broadcasting from the BCTV studios in Brattleboro, Vermont. We've had quite a few meetings since the last podcast, and I'll try to get you caught up on all of that and give you a sense of what's coming up during the rest of April. We had a select board meeting on March 20th, another on March 24th, another on April 1st, and April 8th. I'll do a quick review of those and then preview 3 select board meetings coming up on April 10th, April 15th, and April 17th. The board met on Thursday, March 20th, and this was the last meeting for Select Board Chair Daniel Quip and the former Select Board. On the consent agenda, there were originally 7 items, but the board decided to pull 2 items, a municipal planning grant and the police substation design and project management contracts, from the consent agenda, and those were discussed at a later time during the meeting. The 5 items that remained on the consent agenda were annual entertainment licenses for the India Masala House and Midnights, a bid approval of $45,674 for a compact tractor replacement at the Rec and Parks Department, and appointment of a representative to the Wyndham Solid Waste Management Board of Supervisors, and finally a approval of a $115,250 bid award for a Brooks Memorial Library roof replacement, which is funded through a federal ARPA grant. Under regular business, the first item they took up was one of the issues that was on the consent agenda but got pulled, and that was ratifying a contract, actually 2 contracts, for the police substation project at the Transportation Center. And the board moved to ratify a contract with Robin Sweetapple for design and PHVAC engineering services in the amount of $13,650, and an owner's project manager's contract with Steve Horton for project management services in the amount of $20,000, and that motion passed by a vote of 5-0. The second item that they took up from the consent agenda was the municipal planning grant, and that was authorized to staff to apply for up to $30,000 from the 2025 Municipal Planning Grant Fund to hire a consultant to help with a capital plan and budget, provided we have Planning Commission approval. The board did approve that 5-0. The next item under regular business was an initial discussion around the organization known as One Brattleboro. This is an effort for all of the leadership of public health and public safety organizations in town to be getting together and working to address townwide issues related to those topics in a more coordinated and hopefully effective way. This group has been meeting for a number of months, trying to coalesce and come together, and they've put together a charter and a bunch of communication materials, and it is really looking to be a promising collaboration. A number of the One Brattleboro members came and spoke to the board about their experience working with One Brattleboro so far, including Sue Graff, Kate Traskus, Assistant Police Chief Jeremy Evans, Elizabeth Bridgewater, Leona Watt, Christine Hazard, and Steve Brown. I'm sure the board will be hearing more about this organization, and it's kind of part of the overall safety agenda that the board has been working on and wanting staff to put time into. The second item under regular business that was not off the consent agenda was a Canal Street study presentation, and Planning Department staff Sue Fillion and Steve Hayes joined the meeting and brought in their consultants from SLR to talk about the plan that SLR has done for Canal Street. And I would recommend anyone look at that presentation that was recorded by BCTV for that meeting if they're interested in the future of Canal Street. The board did endorse the draft Canal Street Safe Street and Stormwater Corridor Plan by a vote of 5-0. Following that, On March 20th, there was discussion of an interim zoning bylaw amendment to bring the town in compliance with changes that have been made at the state level. And the board made a motion to adopt an interim zoning bylaw under 24 VSA section 4415 to amend the town's zoning map to move parcels with access to municipal water and sewer service into the residential neighborhood 5400 zoning district, and to amend section 226.c of the land use and development regulations to include dimensional standards for parcels that are unserved by municipal water and sewer that are consistent with the rural residential zoning district. So that motion was passed by a vote of 5-0. And if you want more information about that item, I would encourage you to reach out to Planning Director Sue Fillion. Next, Sue Fillion discussed the planning department permit fees, and the fees for the planning department haven't been increased since 2009, and they are now not covering the administrative costs of even compiling and considering these permits. So the board discussed this and approved a motion to revise the zoning fee schedule as submitted by Director Fillion. Following that, there was an EMS reimbursement update. This was an item that the board had asked come back prior to the next fire department quarterly update. So Assistant Fire Chief Charles Keir and EMS Superintendent William Fritz updated the board on where things were at with EMS reimbursements, and Superintendent Fritz reported that total reimbursements were then standing at $369,574 as of March 13th, which puts the fire department on track to meet their targets for reimbursements in the FY25 budget. Superintendent Fritz noted that they have now overcome the Medicare barrier and are getting almost all of the billing and reimbursement accounts all set and online. Assistant Chief Keir applauded Superintendent Fritz for his work on this. He also thanked Golden Cross Ambulance and the town finance department for all of their work to get through all the bureaucracy around making sure that the billing is working smoothly. There was no motion on that item. It was just an update to the board. Final item in March 20th, Police Chief Norma Hardy and Assistant Chief Jeremy Evans entered the meeting to discuss drug sales in town and a safe neighborhood group that was started by people concerned about a drug house in their neighborhood. Chief Hardy discussed the history around that and some of the crime statistics in town, noting that we've seen a 290% uptick in drug calls. The Safe Neighborhood Group had put together some guidance that future neighborhoods facing the challenge of a drug house in their environs could use to figure out how to best address it and safely address it. And communications coordinator Seth Thomas has placed that information up on the town's website, and this was reported to the board at that meeting on March 20th. So that's March 20th. The next meeting was the first meeting of the new select board on March 24th, and this is the annual organizational meeting. A slate of officers, Elizabeth McLaughlin as chair, Oscar Heller as vice chair, and Isaac Evans-Frantz as clerk, were nominated and voted in by the board on a 5-0 vote. The next select board meeting was on Thursday, April 1st. At this meeting, the first thing was the swearing in of Jay Simons as Brattleboro's new fire chief. On the consent agenda, there were two issues. One was a parade permit request from Indivisible Brattleboro for an event that happened, I think, on April 5th, and then appointment of Wyndham Regional commissioners for the town of Brattleboro. And both of those items passed by a vote of 5-0. Under regular business, Snow Republic joined the meeting to request an outside consumption permit, and the board approved an outside consumption permit for Snow Republic located at 100 Main Street from May 2nd, 2025 through October 3rd, 2025. And I believe that is for outdoor seating during gallery walks outside of that restaurant. The next item on the April 1st agenda was some select board housekeeping, some issues that the board visits every year. They looked at a rotation schedule for reviewing and signing warrants for the town, and they filled that out. Then they looked at a number of select board assignments for various boards and committees that select board members represent the town on. The final housekeeping item that they discussed was the select board's rules of procedure, which they review every year. And there were a few follow-up items that they asked the staff to look into to adjust the rules of procedure, and so those will be brought back at a future meeting. No motions were made on that item. So this was April 1st. It followed the representative town meeting where the last select board's budget was not approved. So it was kind of kicked back by RTM to the new select board. And so on April 1st, they had their first discussion around redevelopment of an FY26 budget. They talked a lot about, what kind of lies ahead of them and the timing and the scheduling for the discussions around redevelopment of the budget. And they talked about meeting on a number of nights in April, including April 8th, April 10th, April 15th, April 17th, April 22nd, April 24th, and April 29th. The final issue for the April 1st meeting was Western Avenue bike lanes. There was a motion to authorize the repainting of the bike lanes on the avenue between Green Street and Exit 2 with the 2025 state paving project coming up, such that parking will be on only the south side of the avenue and the bike lanes will be straight on either side, and perhaps including a buffer if there's space. And that motion was passed by a vote of 5-0. So that was April 1st. April 8th, there was a special select board listening session that was held at Brooks Memorial Library and on Zoom. And this was related to the FY26 budget redevelopment. And the board heard from many speakers, and the questions that they asked people were, what values do you most want to see reflected in the FY26 budget? What topics do you want to see the select board do a deep dive on? And what do RTM members most want to see changed in the FY26 budget? So the board heard comments on each of those topics and did a little bit of wrap up at the end. The next select board meeting is scheduled for Thursday, April 10th. And this is what is on the agenda for that special meeting. First, there will be a ceremonial item where commendations will be given to 3 town staff who were particularly involved in the recent fire response at the School for International Training. Under regular business, there's no consent agenda. So under regular business, the board will take up their rules of procedure once again with some minor changes that were made following the discussion at their last meeting on the topic, and they will consider approving those. Then the bulk of the special meeting on April 10th will be about the FY26 budget redevelopment. The board will address 3 subtopics. First of all, their takeaways from the listening session, and then they will kind of do opening budget remarks, what each select board member is thinking about, and have a general budget discussion among themselves about how to proceed in getting a revised budget back to a representative town meeting, hopefully before July 1st when we enter the fiscal year 2026. And then the third subtopic is determining a future meeting schedule around all of the budget topics that they want to get into. That is the meeting of Thursday, April 10th. On Tuesday, April 15th, there's a regular meeting scheduled, and at this regular meeting, this will be held at the Select Board's regular meeting room at 230 Main Street on the 2nd floor, and also on Zoom. I will take this minute to note that the Zoom connections have all been changed recently, so if you want to attend this meeting or any Select Board meeting coming up, please go to the town website to find that Zoom link and the meeting ID and passcode. On the consent agenda for April 15th, there are 3 items being considered. One is authorizing DPW staff to apply for up to $200,000 in VTrans Town Highway Class 2 paving grants projects, and then also authorization for them to apply for grants up to $200,000 for town highway structures, also from VTrans funding. And then the third consent agenda item is authorizing a $22,248 municipal server replacement, and that is to replace the aging servers in the municipal center for the town. Under regular business, we have 4 items and then 1 item on the budget redevelopment. So the 4 kind of regular business items are a financial quarterly update for this fiscal year, FY25, through quarter 3, through the third quarter. Second is a quarterly update from the fire department. Third is a arts committee project that I believe the Downtown Brattleboro Alliance is bringing to have the select board consider. And the fourth item is a farm stabilization agreement with Wild Carrot Farm. And then, of course, the fifth item is the FY26 budget redevelopment. The subtopics that the board wishes to discuss are hearing about the Finance Committee's report, as well as related structural budget issues around that. And then they want to do a deep dive on the solid waste decision. So that is the meeting of April 15th. There is also a meeting for Thursday, April 17th. This will be a special meeting in the Select Board meeting room and on Zoom. And this will just be on the topic of the FY26 budget redevelopment. The 3 subtopics at the April 17th meeting are revenues, the select board budget reductions that were done in the last select board, so revisiting those, and then potential service reductions other than public safety. So I think they want to take that up at a meeting the following week, but those are the 3 FY26 budget topics that I believe will be on April 17th. So tune in if you're interested in following any of that. So there is your whirlwind update on what has been happening in town government in Brattleboro. Please reach out to me at the town manager's office if you have any suggestions or want to discuss anything further. There's lots and lots of additional information on the town website, brattleboro.gov, about what's discussed at the select board meetings. So please check in there for agendas, reports, and backup materials. Thank you all for listening, and we'll see you again soon.